I'll do the concept of Futo first. The concept of Futo is very simple. We have all these computers in our lives, and companies are treating them like they're their computers that they happen to manage to get into your pocket, and they will exploit you once they get their computer into your pocket. That is what Futo is founded on, and it's very adjacent to something that's existed for a while, open source. So I'm going to do a talk about open source and open hardware, mainly open source because that's what I know. I know software a lot better than I know hardware, and how do we make it good? So let's just kind of get right into it. So Ian just introduced me. Yeah, I created Yahoo Games. There's a picture of me with the founder of Yahoo way back in the day. Open source was very important to us all back in 1997. And I'm working on FUBs now as one of the many projects that we have here at Futo. And let's keep going. Okay, so a lot of you, I believe, are engineers, developers, write software like me. Our job is not to get rich and go get a yacht. Our job is to make good software for people, like good products for people. So we're supposed to be making delightful products for people. We get paid very well for this. So we should treat it seriously. There's a lot of people making our lives better that don't get paid nearly as well as we get paid. So, what's a delightful product? It's pretty simple. We all know it. Like, it solves a problem. It has good UI. It's fast. It doesn't malfunction. There's no bugs. Has no hidden agenda. Like, this is kind of stuff that Steve Jobs would always talk about and really push, things like that. Like, a lot of you love Steve Jobs, a lot of you hate him, whatever. Like, he did push for great products. And let's just kind of talk about, I felt I did this at Yahoo Games with the exception of the hidden agenda part. Like, Yahoo was actually pioneering the hidden agenda. But for the rest of it, Yahoo Games was pretty good at the time. Like, a lot of other things crashed. A lot of other things like disconnected you. A lot of other things took like 5 minutes to download instead of 10 seconds. And guess what? I used a ton of open source to do this. I was in grad school, and I was a big fan of the Amiga, which was like one of kind of like the last computers before we kind of got ossified with Macintosh and Windows. But as soon as the Amiga failed, I got myself a Red Hat Linux machine, 486. I was able to get nice graphics. I was able to get a nice editor with Emacs. I was able to compile things with GCC. I started using Java, which I think was trying to be open. Like, Java and open source is a fun story too. But yeah, I was able to only buy the computer and build a product that had by the time I left Yahoo, we had 10 million monthly active users, and it was lots of people playing pool and stuff, and everything was run on open source. So yeah, I like open source. But let's talk a little bit about the kind of a bit of the history. Is probably the first person to really kind of treat this seriously would have been Richard Stallman. He was very upset that he had a printer that was broken and he couldn't fix it, or he kind of figured out how to fix it, but the printer manufacturer made it difficult for him to write the software or get the software and modify it so it didn't break, something like that. So he kind of defined these 4 freedoms: use, study, modify, distribute. So basically, whatever you want to do, the software is almost just not owned by the author anymore in a lot of ways. So there's a long history of open source. Richard Stallman might not even have been the first one to be talking about these things, but let's talk about where we are now. I think we'd all agree that it's still a great product for engineers and developers. We all love using Linux, a lot of us do at least. We're all running SQLite database or SQL, MySQL, whatever, like Postgres. It's a great product for us. Like I use it. I love it. It's a great product. As a developer and an engineer, it's a great product to me. But as if you think about it, it's not a good product for consumers. I mean, if you kind of look at something like GIMP versus Photoshop, it's like, okay, Photoshop's better. Like, maybe some people like GIMP better, but again, kind of the market speaks, and like Photoshop makes a lot of money, even though they're doing a lot of bullshit these days with subscriptions and stuff, but like, it's still considered better. I mean, let's talk about Linux. Linux is great for servers, right? Like, we all run our servers. We don't have to pay any money for anybody. Like, people used to charge tons of money to run a Unix server, and now we get Linux for free. And everything else that runs on it, we can do all these great things, and we can create these awesome data mining products with them, and then like get acquired by Google, and well, you know the rest of the story, right? Like, at the end of the day, the consumer didn't get anything good out of it, like, but great for us. Let's talk about desktop Linux. Has just always been like a bastard child. Like, it's never gotten any attention. It's at like 4% market share now, so it's eking along. But I use it every day, but it's not winning. It's not winning. It's not doing the things it takes to win. Mobile Linux is a complete joke. Like, mobile Linux is just dead. A company did decide to take Linux and use it on mobile and make it not a joke, and that was Google. They did that with Android, right? So Android is actually an okay product for consumers if you accept the hidden agenda, right? Like, it kind of works. It's not, I would say it's not the best, but it works pretty well. But it's actually, it's not even open source. Like, there's a little piece of it that's open source, and then Google is just, this would be like a 3-hour talk if I talked about the tangled web of like contracts and stuff that make it so that Android, like 3 billion Android devices in this world, and they all have the Google malware on them. Maybe like 100,000 of us are running like Graphene OS or something, but yeah, yay. Have you built Graphene OS? No. Yeah. Okay, that doesn't sound very open to me. If you can't even build it yourself, right? So at the end of the day, open source has not lived up to this promise. It hasn't. There's small successes here and there, but it hasn't lived up to the promise. We're like decades into it. And so here's my question: Who has the best consumer products? This is my honest opinion. It's Apple. And like, Apple has done, here's a thought experiment. Take your aunt, say she's like, has to be in a nursing home, and you only get to see her once every 6 months, and you can give her a computer to like make her have a better life in the nursing home. I'm probably gonna give her an iPad or something. Or I'm going to give her an Apple product. If I give her a Linux product, we all have to like, we've all dealt with this of like trying to get our friends to use Linux products and like all the ordeal it takes to maintain it for them, right? Android might be a little bit better, but in terms of, because the hidden agenda isn't there, but I would actually say even if you ignore the hidden agenda part of Android, it's not as good. It's just like Apple's snappier, the list view scrolls fast, like the swiping on the list view is better, there's fewer hiccups, like just things like that do matter. I mean, Apple is a luxury, the market has spoken really, like Apple can charge 5 times what Android charges for the same computer, and they'll still sell a ton of them. So, maybe there's more Androids out there, but that's only because you can get like a $50 Android phone, and an Apple is still hundreds of dollars. And guess what? Apple actually doesn't really have much of a hidden agenda. They're actually kind of pretty good about protecting their customers. Government, we've seen recently with the UK that Apple can be coerced by governments, so there's a little worry there, but yeah, they don't really have much of a hidden agenda. And And obviously, Apple is the least open. They've been spending decades. They started with BSD Unix back in the 90s, really, with what became Mac OS and iOS. And they just becoming less and less open as they go. They've abandoned x86 for their own ARM chips that are developed in-house. So Apple is the least open and the best product. So we have a huge problem here because we hate Apple. We want to be open. Being open does matter. And so why does being open matter? Well, it really is. It should be our computer. We do want. And I think this resonates more with developers than the public, because maybe one of the reasons why we became developers is because we wanted to be able to control our own computers, right? So, we want right to repair, we want privacy and security. An example I like to talk about is just with Apple. If the UK delivered, their own build of Signal Messenger to Apple and said, you have to make this the next update for Signal Messenger. There's no direct relationship between the Signal developers and their customers on Apple. It's just Signal developers deliver something to Apple, and then Apple decides it's okay and then puts it on, or they can actually add. I don't think they're doing this, but they could, right? So we care about these things. We do care about the fact that they can do this, even though they don't have to have this capability, but they built everything so that they do have this capability because it's the most profitable way for them to do it. We want to be able to do basic customization. We all want to be able to fiddle with our software and maybe make it do different things. And then, political censorship is becoming a big thing now. Governments are just shutting down things everywhere these days for various reasons. China's, we always talk about China censoring, but, Western governments are doing it now too. If you get Telegram on Apple, you're just there'll be some channels that just are unavailable to you depending on which country you're in. Which is not actually, Telegram's actually pretty cool. They'll if you sideload on Android, they'll show you everything. They'll say and then if you try to get to the channel without Android, they'll say you can't use an App Store version of the app. So, and then the app stores are obviously this is what kind of triggered me first was in 2008 when Apple started establishing the App Store. This, I was this is not acceptable. We can't have a situation where I'm a software developer. I need to be able to write good products. I need to create great products and have a direct relationship with my customer and get them to them. I can't have Apple deciding and vetoing me and telling me how to build my product. And they actually do that. They go in and even would nitpick on little UI things sometimes. So these are our Futo ideals. So, okay, let's get in. Why didn't open source win? Let's kind of talk about some of the problems with open source, and hopefully how can we make open source win in the future. So, why are open source products bad? Well, let's follow the money. So, kind of the very nature of those 4 freedoms from Richard Stallman meant that consumers had the freedom to not pay you for your software. So we wound up with hardware manufacturers and big tech companies like Google had all the money using big and this was Yahoo even in the beginning. Apple would pay FreeBSD developers, and we would be paying FreeBSD developers to make FreeBSD better for Yahoo so that we could make products that exploited users with ads and stuff, right? So it's really simple. Google's not on this list. They're the next tier down. They're gold members. They've actually cheapened out here. But obviously, so many of the core contributors of all these projects that are kind of big in the open source world are from Google. So yeah, and then corporations get their people into the original founders of or the pioneers of open source. I want to call them people like Bruce Perens, Eric Raymond. They're long gone. The people in these organizations now are former big tech executives, or their next job will be for big tech. So we've got that going on, and like consumers are really not anywhere thought of in these organizations. And then we just kind of have this, we have basic corporate exploitation. Here's the list on the right of all the executives in the Linux Foundation, how much they make, and every kind of meaningful, any impactful open source organization looks pretty much like this. I think the exceptions would be the Free Software Foundation, which really hasn't done much in a long time, and I guess maybe not Futo, hopefully. Like Futo will not have any of these people ever. Actually, I think we were talking to Andreas Kling about this. He's going to keep Ladybird pure, so that's great. So yeah, there's this free rider problem. Like if you're a great open source developer, you can just be like Linus Torvalds is great. Like wow, he's only making 1.5 million a year, and he's the one person on this list that's you should make more, right? And a lot of these developers of Linus Torvalds' caliber they're just getting exploited, and they're okay with it. That's okay. But actually, I'm going to say this: I refuse. I'm not going. As an author, I'm not going to write anything that can be exploited by these people. I want to do open source, but I'm not going to write anything that can be exploited by these people. I don't want my work being used to shill penis pills or whatever on Facebook. Whatever they're doing. So, and it is the permissive licenses that have enabled this to happen. The big companies can do whatever they want with open source. And it's, typical tragedy of the commons. The people who really do care about making a great product are treated very poorly. And we do get some really great stewards of things, but it's such a shitty job. A lot of people just they feel like they're getting exploited, they feel it's thankless, and they quit. And here's an example. Here's just a list. I'm talking a lot about consumer software. Nobody even tries to do a consumer software company that's open source. System software companies are also leaving. They're this isn't working for us, so we have all these companies that are reevaluating kind of what's been established with open source. Anyway, so what's the solution? Well, I mean, this is what we're going with at Futo. It has to be open. Everything has to be open. That's that's mandatory. It's so important for us not to go into a tech dystopia where we've got big companies and governments with all these computers that are so important in our lives that aren't controlled by us. So that mandates open software and open hardware. But we do feel like non-commercial clauses for open source are a way forward. So what does that mean? That means that the open source license has a clause in it that means that you cannot use it for commercial use. You might be able to if you talk to me, maybe I'm going to approve of it and maybe we'll make a deal, right? Basically I want a developer who's in college now, who's looking at the landscape. I don't want them to look at open source and be thinking, oh, this is a bunch of, I'm not going to be able to really have an impact here the way I want to because of all these weird rules. And then they just well, I'll pick what I chose to do, really. I chose to exploit open source when I was in college, right? Because I actually do want to have a path for that developer to make a great product and not be exploited by big tech. So I would advocate for broader open source and basically just use, but only if you pay. And then you still get all the safety valves that you have currently with open source, which is, if the company goes bankrupt, I've got all the source there, right? And I can still modify and study it, right? So that's what we're going for at Futo. And the main message I want to make here is, do you want to do open source? But do you want to do it without people exploiting your creation? You should be able to do that, and you shouldn't feel obligated to follow big tech's rules. And so, here at Futo, we're going to welcome you to build your open source project, even if it has restrictions on use. So that's what we're trying for here. Does anybody have any questions?
So if the source is open, how do you control who uses it and guarantee that they pay
you're not going to be able to have those guarantees. What we're asking for, we absolutely like any kind of DRM like you get in like a console or on the iPhone now, like is absolutely unacceptable to us. We want, people, if people want to like use software without paying you, even though they should, that's their choice. That's their choice. We don't want them to do that. And companies who are using software will not do that too, because they can get sued, right? We definitely, I didn't mention this as a problem, but yeah, a big problem is, and maybe Lewis is going to be getting into this later, is the consumers have to be willing to pay for software, right? So consumers have to be willing to pay for software. This is like two groups of people have to get better here. The consumers have to decide to pay, and the developers have to decide to stop working for Google and Apple and doing all this bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, there could be some technological solutions here where you say hash the binary or hash, and you say, oh, I can tell you got it, but I don't
think there are. And I wouldn't want to try going that way, because you very quickly get into what PlayStation does. Yeah. Which is like trying to do DRM. Because I think that's just wrong.
The other value, and this is for nerds, not for the great unwashed out there, of open source, is they're scratching an itch, right? There are a lot of people, the availability of an OS like Linux or any number of databases or all the compilers, it's how guys and girls coming up learn, oh, wow, this is how a working OS or a working database is designed, and I can go play with it. Yeah. So they get this psychic... Right.
Yeah,
which I'm sure you had too.
Yeah,
right?
And we want that to continue.
Exactly.
We want that to continue. Like the project I'm working on, Fubs, is all about, I often say it's like, when it's done, I will consider it the ultimate open source, because we are trying to get that level of introspection available to anybody running software. I used to always joke about Gen 2 Linux is a fun one, right? Like if you want to build Gen 2 Linux, it's not fun.
Hi. One of the biggest open source projects that has actually got into the mainstream is OBS. How do we actually distribute software and make it good to the point where it becomes a household name for the end consumer?
Well, I mean, it has to be good. I always say it has to be good first. But yeah, marketing is a huge part of this, and so this is the kind of like the consumers have to respond, because to have a marketing budget, you have to have the capability to sell the software later. If you view this as a marketing problem, which is I think what you're talking about, marketers follow profit. It's very simple.
So make sure I can be heard. You're well aware we're in open source hardware, and our specific initiative is more humanitarian and community-based. In terms of that, we don't really care about somebody having to pay us for it, unless they're manufacturing. And my question is about open hardware licenses, which we've been looking at pretty heavily. What would be your solution to ensuring, say, the big wheelchair company doesn't just steal it and run?
I mean, I would say, I'm not a lawyer, so, but I guess what I would like to see happen is in this situation, if you create, I would want you to be building open hardware that with all the specs, so that if I need that run software, that is easy so you don't have any privilege writing software for it over other people, right? So if I buy your hardware, I don't want to be harder for a random person buying your hardware to write software for it than you. Now, in terms of the actual putting it together the way you do, I wouldn't be, like when I say open hardware, that's what I'm talking about. If you want, I think it makes sense to protect that with like standard intellectual property. Like I wouldn't want you to put DRM in it, and I wouldn't want you to make it difficult for other programmers to manipulate the hardware with software. But I wouldn't want you to make it easy for China to do a knockoff, or for a big wheelchair company to do a knockoff without having to negotiate a deal with you.
Do you see anything coming in terms of legislative protection for open hardware licensing?
I leave that to other people. I get too upset with Washington, D.C. Yeah. I'm a builder first, and so everything I am pushing for here is like, as a programmer, as a builder, what can we do, right? What can we do? So.
Thank you. Can't see if anybody's behind me. That's why I am.
Okay, this is going to have to be the last question.
Yes, my name's David Williams. I was forced into retirement because of a layoff, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but the tech job market is in distress right now. Any ideas how to leverage open source for maybe a personal portfolio, et cetera, so I can come out of retirement?
Oh, I mean, definitely go on, like write a bunch of stuff, and everybody who's hiring is looking at GitHub these days, which kind of sucks because it's Microsoft owned. I don't know if, but yeah. All right, thanks everybody.